Hello, everyone. We are here with Ricky again, and Ricky was just going to tell us a story, actually. Okay. So he's at a conference right now in Chicago.
Yeah, I'm at a conference, and just the way that I am, I believe that I'm a big advocate of learning, but I think true learning always equals a change in behavior. True learning always equals a change in behavior. So, part of these conversations that we've been having over the last month or so, I've been thinking a lot about identity, a lot. And so I was on the panel, and it was a panel on medical marijuana. And I started off pointing out um, that we all have different identities, right? That we've all had different experiences with the medical field based on our identities. Like a man has a different experience with going to the doctor than women do, right? Right? And you could argue definitely, at least in the conventional world, that Black people and white people have different experiences going to the doctor. And more specifically to me, as a football player, most of my experiences with the doctor, right, it was about how do we get you back on the field, peak performance. So my relationship to medicine is different from other people's based on those experiences. Um, and I'm just thinking of everything that way. And as the more and more I do it, it's like, how have astrologers not been talking about this? You know,
Yeah.
it, to me, it's a, if anything is serious, right? It's a serious issue. It's a serious issue in the sense of we are limiting the efficacy of astrology's ability to improve the quality of our lives by not including identity, because identity is so much a part of our lives. And I think one of the things that people love about astrology is that they don't have to think about identity. You know, and I can appreciate it as an escape from the rigid boxes that people tend to shove us in based on identity. Totally understand that. But to me, I think there has to be some kind of meaningful integration, because I think of identity as one layer of who we are, and our astrological identity, right? It's a separate identity, at least initially, that's a deeper level. And if we can find a way to integrate the two, then it allows the deeper level that we can see in the chart to have harmonious expression through the next layer of identity. I think that's kind of the point.
Well, so let me speak to that. This is really interesting what you're saying because I think you're right. One of the things people love about delving into each other astrologically is it's not race, class, and gender. It's okay, you're in Aries, you got these aspects of personality, and it rides above these things. So, at an astrology conference, we see all kinds of people, different walks of life, doctors, and then we see, we have all subsets of life. And the only thing that makes you part of the astrology community is if you're into learning this chart thing, right? And so I think you're right. At first, it becomes this nice getaway from these race, class, and gender issues. And then we get to the level of astrologer that you and I are working at, where we get inquiries, we're reading charts for clients, we've got clients of all diverse backgrounds, and it comes back to the Tetrabiblos where Ptolemy was saying, that a good astrologer knows all about their client, knows their culture, just like a doctor. Like, can you imagine if a doctor didn't know you were a football player, but they were trying to treat you? Well, they wouldn't, how could they even know what to do if they didn't know your life context and background? So I think you're right. It's like we hit a level of development with the chart if we don't integrate these identities back in, where we can't really rise to any occasion. And so I think you and I have a target audience of probably the advanced astrologers, of people who have done all that work without race, class, identity, and now are ready to say, like, and what if we melded it with these other things? Not that the newbies can't enjoy us. I mean, come on.
Well, I mean, if they can appreciate our goal, and I think most people who've lived enough can appreciate the human side of it, but maybe you have to have a little bit more astrological understanding to appreciate the astrological side of it. But that can serve as motivation to want to understand the astrology more, because the aim that we're proposing is so cool.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think it's really astrology is a process of discovery. What makes it so cool is, if you and I are astrologers together, I can say, well, Ricky, what's that Mars, Venus, and Aries like, and what's that, what's that feel like, and so then I can listen to you, and you and I come from different backgrounds and different cultures, but we can find common ground and a friendship built on just studying these chart things. Now, I think you and I are, as identity politicians, are taking it to another level. And I'm saying, and tell me that how that expresses as an African American man. And you and I have a rapport so we can do that. And I find that to be a compelling conversation. Perhaps some people would be feeling that that's oppressive, but I think you and I are trying to say to the astrologers, can we celebrate these parts of identity along with the chart? It makes me think of a fight I've gotten in with, not a fight, but a kind of discourse with, I don't know if you know Barry Perlman. Do you know Barry?
No.
He's like high up there in, I think, OPA, the no, maybe ISAR, the International Society of Astrological Research. Well, he has this thing where when anyone brings up gender in the chart, he gets mad at me because my students do this a lot because I have a lot of transgender students and students who are really into gender, and so they start talking about gender in this chart, and he said, "Well, you can't look for gender in a chart. That's like a doctor looking for a genetic, reason for gender." And I said, "No." We are having a celebration of gender. We're not saying where is it in the chart that your gender is X, Y. With this furrowed brow, we're saying gender, it's in the chart. Is it in the chart? Like, I'm like, can we look at the chart for gender? Like, it's just a different conversation than being like, can we find a genetic reason for gender dysphoria? Like, it's not the same conversation. Same with race. I guess what I'm trying. I didn't mean to call it Barry here, but Barry, it gets political, is what I'm saying, and I think you and I are saying, can we celebrate race and look at it in the chart? Like, we're not being like, is race in the chart? Like we're like, it's a celebration of the thing.
Well, we can't. I could make the argument that race isn't chart, but I won't. But I think the argument that I will make is that race expresses through the chart. And I think, as long as we are asking questions, it cannot be oppressive.
I love that about you. You're really good at saying if someone's curious, then they can't be just this oppressor because they have an open framework. What if X, Y, Z? Well, okay, so tell me more about that. How can race be expressed through the chart?
How can it not? Right? Because I think of, and again, I'm very planet centric. I think for me, I'm looking at the planets are trying desperately to express themselves through the personality. And part of the personality is race, right? And so if someone has, I've been thinking about this all week, right? The sun, okay, the sun, and I got obsessed with this idea of psychological compensation. Okay? And people can look up on Google psychological compensation. My definition is slightly different. Mine is more core to the idea of what compensation means. It means that something wants to like I hurt my ankle, right? I'm playing football and I hurt my ankle. And so my ankle is disabled. And so in order for me to walk, right, some other part of me has to take on the responsibility that my hurt ankle, right? Right. Or if, I have to miss work for a couple of days, I got to ask my friend at work if they'll cover for me, right? They're taking on more because I'm not going to be there. So taking on more because something can't work, doesn't work, okay? But
Mhm.
it still needs to express. And if we apply this concept to the sun, okay? And I think of the sun as the way I like to say it, the sun is our need for applause, okay? And that applause can literally be applause. It can be a smile, it can be a high five, it could be a good job, right? It could be just a feeling of warmth of I get you, okay? But the sun is the need for that, right? And so let's say some like example is my chart, right? I'm a ninth house Gemini sun, okay? And so as if I was born to attorneys, okay, or scholars, okay, right? Even white or black, either, okay. But if I was born to a family of teachers or scholars, and the whole theme in the house was you're smart, you're smart, you're smart, you're smart, you're smart, you're smart, okay, ooh, okay, right. As much as I have that, my sun does not really need to compensate because it's getting rewarded for being smart, for being a ninth house Gemini. Okay. All right. Let's say I'm born into a poor family. Neither parents went to school, right? And I live in uh, uh, a poor neighborhood where education's not that important. Okay. Then if I'm smart, I get beat up. Okay. But the fact that I can run fast, ooh, okay, I get the applause and I get the high fives. Okay. So in that sense, right, my athletic ability starts to become a compensation for my ninth house Gemini sun.
Mm,
And
interesting.
and and what's interesting about the compensation piece is that if when my right ankle gets healthy, I still compensate, right? My left ankle is taking on too much extra pressure for too long, and it breaks. So in a general sense, right, we see this story happen so often. Someone is really successful in the world, and then towards the end, there's some catastrophe where everything falls apart. Okay. That is the expression of a compensation. Okay. And it's funny because compensations are the things in life that lead to the greatest success because in this case, it's the compensation for the sun. Again, the need for applause. But if I'm getting applause in ways that I'm not supposed to be getting applause, okay, right? The part of me that really needs to get the applause is always going to be bugging me and anxious. And the part that's compensating it's going to eventually break, right? And I came to this realization thinking about my NFL football career, because the compensation I described, I'm talking about myself, right? Is that I wasn't appreciated for being the smart kid, or I should say I was more appreciated for being the fast, athletic kid, right, than I was for being the smart kid. So when my son went to get fed, instead of going to the difficult path of trying to get people to realize I was smart, it was easier to get people to applaud me for being a good football player. Right.
Mm.
So, and I have Mars and Aries conjunct Venus, conjunct the South Node. So when we look at compensations in the chart, it's going to be something else in the chart that is very powerful, that is more resonant with getting attention from the
Well,
environment.
that's
That's
what
gonna,
I would say is that both of those are a part of you. Neither one's a compensation for either one. They're both expressions of you. But the
but
sun was
it's
being
a compensation.
underexpressed.
It's a compensation because if I'm limping on my left leg, it's still an expression of me, but the left leg is taking on a duty that it was not meant to take on. And so a part that is supposed to be doing something doesn't have work, and there's a part that's overworked. Right?
So,
It's
what if you
funny.
were able to play football and be a professor? Would you feel wholly expressed?
If it wasn't a compensation, yes, 100%. But that's why I don't think there's a right or a wrong, but I do think there are gradations of compensation. And it's really nuanced because I'm talking specifically about the sun. Okay. I honor, right, that because part of it is, in order to do a successful compensation, it has to be a part of yourself that has the ability to do something that'll earn applause, right? But but someone like me who has a weak sun, it's not helpful, right? Again, I won all these trophies. I was a hyper successful athlete, but I broke. And not that breaking is bad, okay? But I can recognize that the break comes from overcompensating. Because I thought about this, because the nature of the sun is it's steady. It's steady, right? It rises every day.
Mhm.
No, I think about someone who had a wonderful football career, Tom Brady. Okay. Tom Brady is a 10th house Leo sun conjunct Saturn. Okay. And if I was building a chart for a quarterback in the NFL, right, I might pick those. I might pick because it can sustain that way. Okay. You take a ninth house Gemini and you try to make them do a 10th house Leo sun conjunct Saturn is supposed to do, right? It can play the part for to a certain extent, but eventually it's gonna break.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah.
Okay.
I have to tell you though, I think I mean, I know I'm going a little bit off your point here, but I think you are becoming known as the philosopher. So when I meet guys who know who you are, they'll say, Ricky Williams, you mean the guy, he left football, he smoked weed and all this stuff. And I was like, well, kind of, but they're like, yeah, he's so spiritual, he's so this and that. And I was like, yeah, he's the philosopher. Like, I feel like you're the philosopher of the NFL.
this is my point though, right? This is my point is this is because I recognized from the break, this is the advantage of the break. From the break, I didn't think something's wrong, right? I'm bad. I thought I recognized the compensation and I started making steps to correct it. I started leaning more consciously into doing ninth house Gemini stuff so that I could manifest a healthier sun that can actually sustain, right? Like I could say, and I say this literally, I could talk about astrology, my philosophy all day, okay?
Wow.
All day, every day, right? Because doing it taps into the sun. And so I'm using energy, but energy that gives me energy back. Oh, wow. Okay. And
Yeah,
to me, that's what the sun is about.
episode thing we're doing is totally you living out your ninth house. Like I feel like this is a manifestation of you as the philosopher or a philosopher. And I think it's really cool to see you just thriving in this environment of just, hearing your ideas. So it sounds like we're tripping on the sun today. Okay, so let's talk about, okay, sun rules Leo. What do you have to say about that? It doesn't rule two signs. So how do you, it's only a masculine, we only got
Yeah.
masculine yang.
Uh-huh. Okay. So one more thing I want to say before I jump into the sun. Something you just said. Hmm. It'll come back. Okay. So the sun. So when if we think about, every the at least the first the personal planets, I'll say, rule two signs. And then we have the luminaries and they rule one sign each. And so the fact that we call them luminaries and there's one sign each, you can look at the sun and the moon in a sense as one thing, right? And one, its masculine side we call the sun, its feminine side we call the moon, we call lunar.
Okay, interesting. Yeah. Well, and the moon is the reflected light of the sun.
We're on to something, yeah. But I think this is kind of where masculine and feminine, I think, originates. My teacher Steve, he says, hopefully one day we can get rid of masculine, feminine, and replace them with solar and lunar. And he makes a point, one, because we have we have a everyday exchange with solar and lunar, right? That can shed light, right? That can give us insight on what it means to be solar and what it means to be lunar. Um, it's fascinating. And if we think of, in order to create a child, right, as a symbol of creation, of creating something new, which is mind blowing, right? It's like, right, you have sex and then
That's why
it's
you
like
had to do it six times, just to be
and the
like
thing
mind
and
blown.
this thing shows up. It's the weird. It's like out of nowhere. And then when you watch it go and it starts to talk back to you, it's like, whoa. It's like
Dude, I'm not gonna deny it. I did it once and that was enough for me. It's crazy.
it's the craziest thing in the world. Okay. And in order but in order to do that, right, you need it, well, not anymore, but you need a sperm and an egg. Okay, how they get together now, we can be creative, right? But you need something that originates in a masculine energy and something that originates in a feminine place, and you need those things to come together. All right, body, sorry, a male body and a female body. Things that originate from those things have to come together. Ooh, okay. So we have this idea of solar, lunar, sun, moon. It's built in. Okay, built in. And also, in people that get into energy healing, right, we call it electromagnetic energy. The electro comes from the sun, the magnetic part comes from the moon. Okay. So, in a sense, the sun and the moon are the preeminent symbols for what we're calling masculine, electric, active, and passive, feminine, receptive, etc. Okay. So I think of the sun, right? The sun shines, it radiates outwards. So, right, again, that idea of something that I radiate outwards results in people giving me a high five or an applause or something. I think that's the aim of the sun. Active, okay?
And
The
can
moon,
I add something? The sun
please.
and the moon are the two hearts. The sun in Leo rules the beating masculine muscle of the heart, and then the moon is the waters of the chest, and it's all like the moon's at home in Cancer, where it's all the waters of the chest, which is also a heart. It's like your yin is the water around the heart. It's called the pericardium, and so it's like
And
they're actually both hearts.
Chinese medicine, the pericardium is an organ, it's a whole organ system. Yeah,
Nice.
yeah.
Oh, I
And I
just
do, do a lot of
respected.
I do a lot of craniosacral work, and we work with the diaphragm, and we work with the pericardium, and then they're connected to each other, right? Very much moon cancer stuff.
So you're saying that the sun is the yang outward heart kind of, and then the moon is the yin inward heart, and so they're kind of both ruling the human, and the Leo is the yang masculine, and the Cancer is the yin feminine of sun moon.
Yes, I want to speak to this literally of a sperm, right, breaking through the ovum. Okay, as where we all came from. Okay,
Mm. Yeah.
as where we all came from. Is where we all came. So if it's where we came from, then we can say at our core, it's what we're made of,
Mm. Interesting. Yeah, I
right?
see what you're saying. It's like the basic construction of any being is this sun moon piece is,
Yes. But quite literally, right? The DNA in us came, one came from our papa, one came from our mama.
yeah.
You know, it's literally what we're made of, right?
Yeah.
The energy of our papa, right? A masculine, right? A masculine energy and a feminine, at least masculine enough to get the sperm to the egg, right?
Well, and
Everything
in
else.
so many
That's
says that in the masculine part of the man, it instills the epithumia, which is like what your heart burns for. You know, it's like the passion of the human is comes in through that yang solar energy.
And
So
if we're talking about, and when I'm talking about this version of sex, I'm not talking about the pleasure principle. I'm talking about the function of sex to as a creative function to bring life, the same creative function that brought us to life. Okay. Is in that action, at least in the archetype of the action, one person is penetrated, one person is the penetrator,
mhm.
right? For it to work well, the penetrator has to get excited enough for enough blood to go to the penetrating mechanism to allow it to do its job. Okay. And
Yeah.
before the lube, okay, right, he had to make the feminine, right, moist enough to allow the process to occur.
Oh
Okay.
my God, you said moist, that word.
So when we say lubricated, right, soft, I like that. Soft enough.
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah. So we right, and this is a clue, right? It might take us a little further into Mars and Venus, but we still are starting, right, from the principal place at the sun and the moon, right? And again, I I haven't experienced receiving anal sex. So from that perspective, I don't know what it's like to be the receiver.
Yeah.
Okay. But I have a lot of experience of being the other one. Okay.
Yeah.
And I was at an event, I was at this workshop with this guy who preferred men. Okay. And we all have an open conversation and it was fun. And I became curious of what is it like to be the receiver? You know,
Uh-huh.
I don't know, right? Because my training has told me that that's not what I do. And so I was curious enough, and we kissed, you know, and like we started, and he stopped me, and he said, "No, you have to learn to receive." And I was like, "What?" You know. And so I imagined what it was like, and then we tried again, and I had an experience of being on the other side.
Hmm.
You know,
You had to go beta for a second.
because I had Gemini, I just need a taste, right? I had to have, because I was curious about what it's, I could recognize that I haven't had that experience and I could feel the suffering because I could see how my life would be would be better if I could appreciate at least a little bit more of that perspective.
Wow, you were like you're like when you're ballroom dancing with somebody and they take over leading.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wait, okay. Well,
But here's another example that I think that comes close to me. Okay, another part of the moon in Cancer, and it's part of this receptive side, right? Is nurturing. Okay, nurturing, right? If you've ever been around a solar sun person, okay, they're not right. They're not always good at nurturing because they're so outward that they have no idea how what they're doing is even affecting you, right?
mm,
They don't know what your experience is like, right? Because that requires a certain kind of negativity, receptivity, Okay, right? If you get, we notice when we get around children, most of us, right? If we have decently healthy moons, when we get around children, we become more receptive, right? We watch what we say, right? At least to some extent, we modify our behavior because we're aware that there's a very impressionable being there, right? So it's more of a sensitivity, okay? This is the moon,
Mhm.
right? And also applies to ourselves, right? When we're being solar, when we're being men, right? We don't know how we feel, right?
Yeah. That's true. Well, people who don't have super emotional charts, people always say, "Oh, they're out of touch with their feelings." And I would say they're actually built to not feel that much. They're built to go, go, go. That if we didn't have super fiery charts, certain things wouldn't happen in life. And if we didn't have super watery charts, then people wouldn't get healed through these, situations. So they have different functions, really.
This is beautiful. So as a segue, my Gemini segue here, one of the things I use in the type of astrology I practice is I give all of the planets like number strengths. Okay. And so that allows me to say this is someone's strongest planet and this is someone's weakest planet. Okay. And what I've stumbled upon, looking at charts this way is exactly what you just said. You know, and if when I'm talking to someone and I say the sun, right, is your weakest planet or Venus is your weakest planet, most Americans, right, they interpret that as bad. You
Mhm.
know, I think of like for me, the sun is my weakest planet, right? And I think of if the sun represents light, there are certain experiences, certain things that we like to do with the lights dim low. Hmm.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, and
I just
actually, I would say that, strength and weakness in planetary, people always think it's negative to have a weak planet, but actually all it means is that that planet doesn't produce what it promises as strongly. So sometimes we want a weak planet. Like I don't mind having a weak Mars because I've never punched anyone and ended up in jail, you know what I mean? Like I'm not trying to get tackled on the football field. My Mars is just chilling in Cancer, it's weak there, right?
this was the insight, so because I have one of my partners in Leela, our tech guy, and he's the classic tech archetype, right? He's really good at technical stuff, but he's horrible in social situations, you know um and so we had a company retreat, and he turned like he every single woman on the team, right, came to me or came to my wife and complained about how awkward he was socially, you know and everyone was like grumbling, and I looked at his chart, and I saw Venus was at the bottom of his chart.
Mm.
Okay. And so, right, and based on your definition, right, is based on your definition, it resonates to what I said to him. I said, listen, I started talking to him, and I pointed out Venus is your weakest planet, right? And he was like, what does that mean? And I mean, it's going to be hard for people to like you.
Savage. But true, savage but true.
And when I said it, he laughed, and it was like this huge relief. And he had this moment where he realized how much of his life he's wasted trying to get people to like him.
Mm.
And it was funny. We were at the retreat, and Steve, my teacher, was there, and the idea of the weakest planet came up. It came up in our conversation, and I had a certain thinking about it. And then Steve said, basically, my paraphrasing what Steve said is he said, if it's the weakest planet, don't worry about it so much. And when he said it, I didn't get it, but during the following week, watching everything unfold with my partner, it clicked. And it's really that idea. If it's weak, it means there's value in something being turned down. And so I think of the value of having Venus turned down. Okay, his Venus is in Virgo in the sixth house. Okay, and it's like when we work, you know, it's like let's not. I get so frustrated when I sit down to get work done and people want to do all the niceties, and I'm
Ah.
just,
Yeah,
can we just
maybe
get to
having
work?
a low Venus makes you high productivity in work. And
Yes, yes. You can get
yes,
if you're not wasting your time trying to get people to like you. Okay, right? That's
interesting.
that's that's.
Speaking of Venus, did you get your Venus splash?
I,
Did it
I
send?
did. Thank you. Yes,
Do you think those flowers look like your moon in Cancer?
they did make me think of my moon in Cancer.
Yeah, the
Right?
colors and everything, and it is so different than your Virgo. parts, which are all particular, and then your moon in Cancer is just like so loving and like it's just like you're both of those, you know? And I'm sorry, but I have to build your chart one piece at a time because it's like it's just I can't stop. I hope you don't think it's too much Venus on you.
All right. It's a gift,
When I
right?
get close to you, I start seeing your chart come out, and then I'm like, oh, I gotta show him this what I see or feel. You know what I mean? And then, yeah. So, well, we only have 3 minutes, but I want to know about the cultural significance of the sun, and I don't know if we
Okay,
want
so
to.
easy. This one's easy, and it's built into the story I told. Okay, so we might go a little bit over. I know you have to go, but I
I have to
do.
be somewhere at 3. I need that time. So,
Okay, so so I think the best use of that time is a poem that I wrote like 12 years ago. Okay, maybe even longer. A poem I wrote, and the poem is all about my sun compensation. Okay, so can I do this? Can I share
yeah,
this?
we can always pick up next week with African and white expressions of the sun. We don't have to like mash it into today.
Okay. Actually, I think covering this today and people reflecting right on the sun a little bit, I think it'll
Okay, yeah,
help
give
next.
us the poem, and then we'll think about the sun, and then we can go into the next layer next week.
Okay, so my sun poem, okay? I'm smarter than you, but I won't say it. I'm afraid you'd listen and still not hear shit. I'll say it inside maybe, but not too loud. Heaven forbid I draw a crowd. No, no, no. I won't go there. I won't fight. Daddy dearest is always right. I'll just do it the way you said I can. Then I'll get you when you ain't looking, man. Who am I? I don't know, but you told me. Run, nigga, run. Just don't speak.
Oh my God. That
So
was
you
that was a
you
good pump.
you can see the Gemini, right, tried to come out, but it wasn't appreciated. And so it found other ways to get, right, to get
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Well, I did something right with you. I asked you to speak. I was like, "Will
Yeah.
you talk to us every week?" And like, I see what I did there. Like, I asked you to do what's important to you, and that's probably why you like me today.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a clue for people, right? If you want people to like you, look at their chart. Mm.
Yeah, if you want Ricky to like you, let him talk to you. He is the philosopher. Ricky, I just adore you, and I can't wait to see you next week. Let's pick it up with different cultural representations of the sun because I'm super
That's
curious.
a great place. I think that's a great place to start.
All right. All right, have fun in Chicago.
Sure will.
All right.